If you're watching this video, you may have reached the point where you're tired of always saying yes when you really mean no. Much of what's written about people-pleasing focuses on why we become people-pleasers in the first place. Today, I'd like to explore a different question. Why do so many women in midlife reach a point where they are no longer willing to keep living with the consequences of people-pleasing? What changes? Not the pattern. It's the way you see it that changes. You see, I believe it comes down to one belief, and when that belief changes, saying no becomes much easier. I'm Dee Dee Sung, and welcome to Follow Your Lighthouse. If you're new here, this channel is about helping women 50 and over navigate this stage of life with greater confidence, clarity, and ease. At the heart of people-pleasing is this belief: I have to keep everyone else happy, even if it comes at my own expense. For many of us, that belief didn't appear out of nowhere. We learned over time that when other people weren't happy with us, there was often a price to pay. Maybe someone became angry, or they withdrew. Maybe they stopped talking to you, or made you feel as though you'd let them down. Over time, saying yes became the path of least resistance. You never quite knew how someone would react if you said no, and that uncertainty made saying yes feel like the safer option. It became such an automatic response that before you've had the chance to ask yourself what you really want, you've already said yes. For a long time, this belief probably served you well. It helped you avoid conflict, and at the time, it felt like the safest choice. But as the years go by, something begins to shift. You start to notice the cost of always saying yes. Every time you agree to something you don't really want to do, you're giving up time you can't get back. You're putting your own plans aside. You're putting your own needs on hold. When you keep saying yes to someone else when it isn't what you really want, you're repeating a pattern that's become all too familiar. And eventually, you begin to see what all those yeses have cost you. If you're recognizing yourself in this, you're certainly not alone. By the time you reach your 50s, you've spent decades living by this belief. It shaped the way you responded to family, friends, and work colleagues. It influenced countless decisions, often without you being aware of it. But something begins to change. Looking back, you begin to see the pattern more clearly than you once could. You begin to see it wasn't something that happened once in a while. Without even realizing it, meeting other people's needs had become your natural response. The way you responded whenever someone needed something, the way you decided whose needs came first, and for years that felt like the right thing to do. Now you're beginning to question whether it still is. As you start seeing the pattern, you start noticing it in situations you barely thought about before. That's often the turning point. You begin to wonder whether it's a responsibility that was never really meant to be yours. Up until now, you've believed that you had to make sure everyone else was okay. If that's the belief that's been shaping your decisions for all these years, maybe that's the belief that needs to change. It doesn't mean you stop being considerate of other people's feelings. It means you stop believing you're responsible for everyone else's happiness. That's a very different way of looking at things. People may still be disappointed with you. They may wish you'd given a different response. But that doesn't mean you should have said yes just to keep the peace. You see, when you stop believing it's your job to keep everyone else happy, saying no begins to feel different. And once that belief begins to change, something else changes with it. You no longer feel quite so responsible for how other people respond or react to you. That doesn't mean their reaction won't affect you. It probably will. But there's a difference between not wanting someone to be disappointed with you and believing it's your responsibility to make sure they never are. It gives you a little space where there wasn't any before, space to pause instead of answering straight away. Space to say, let me get back to you, instead of agreeing before you've even thought about it. Space to ask yourself whether you're saying yes because you want to or because you're worried about what will happen if you don't. As you begin letting go of that old belief, you realize that saying yes is no longer your only option. You can pause. You don't have to answer in the moment. You can take a little time to think. That may not sound like a big change, but if you spent years people-pleasing, that pause changes far more than you might expect. Because every time you give yourself that space, you have the chance to choose your answer instead of feeling like you have to say yes right away. And the old pattern of people-pleasing begins to lose its hold over you. Not all at once, but little by little. The difference is that it's your decision, not one made by a belief you've carried for years. And perhaps that's when your choices begin to come from you instead of that old belief. Not because you feel you have to start saying no all the time, but because you realize you no longer have to say yes, unless it's the answer you genuinely want to give. There will still be moments when saying yes is your automatic first response. It's been your way for a long time, so it's natural that it won't change overnight. There are a few things that may make the process a little easier. The first is to give yourself time before you answer. If someone asks you to do something, remember that you don't have to answer on the spot. You can say, "Let me think about that." And that pause gives you time to think about what you want instead of saying yes before you've even had a chance to consider it. The second is to ask yourself one question. If I knew they'd be completely okay with whatever my answer was, what would I say? That question gives you a moment to set aside your expectation of how they might react. It gives you the chance to hear your own answer before you hear theirs. You may realize your answer is different when you're not trying to give the answer you think someone else wants to hear. The third is to notice what happens after you say no, not what happens around you, inside you. Do you immediately start looking at them for their response? Listening for the tone of their voice? Wondering if you've upset them? Waiting to see whether they're disappointed with you? If you notice yourself doing that, it doesn't mean you should have said yes. That's how deeply this belief can become part of how you respond. And once you can notice that pattern, it becomes easier to change it. People-pleasing has probably been part of your life for a very long time. I know it has been for me. It became a way of avoiding conflict, a way to protect yourself from the discomfort of letting someone down, until you start to see what it's costing you. That's often the point where things begin to change. Not all at once, but little by little. You start noticing the moments when you're about to say yes before you've even considered what's right for you. You notice how quickly you place someone else's needs ahead of your own. You may find that saying no still feels uncomfortable, and that's only natural. You've spent so many years believing it was the right thing to do. And once you begin noticing those moments, you have something you didn't have before. The space to choose your answer instead of letting an old habit choose it for you. People-pleasing will still show up. You may still catch yourself believing that keeping everyone else happy is your responsibility. You may even feel tempted to go against what you really want just to make the discomfort you feel go away. But you don't have to let that discomfort make the decision for you. And every time you answer in a way that reflects what you really want, you're taking one more step away from an old pattern that no longer serves you. Before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself saying yes when you really wanted to say no? If you feel comfortable, share your experience in the comments. Someone else may read your words and realize something about themselves they hadn't seen before. And if these conversations are helping you navigate this stage of life, please consider subscribing so we keep exploring these topics together. I really appreciate you spending your time with me on Follow Your Lighthouse. Until next time, remember to keep turning toward your own light. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next video.